What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So over the past couple days I've had a chance to check out Marvel's latest Disney Plus offering, Wonder Man. Quick point of reference, I saw the trailers. I think like they dropped 2 or 3 trailers. None of them really grabbed me. Like they interested me, but they didn't really grab me the way other trailers have for the MCU, both movies and in shows. And having seen the series myself, while quick spoiler in terms of my thoughts about it, I do enjoy it. I understand why it was so hard for them to really, I don't know how they would have really marketed this to mainstream MCU audiences, both casual and hardcore, that have certain expectations regarding the projects. And yeah, just kind of knowing that as my background for this show, let me just go in and talk about what I did like, and there's quite a bit here. And before I get started any further, just want to say this will be a spoiler-free review, so if you haven't seen the show yet, or if you have started watching it but you haven't seen through all the episodes, it's all good. Just, you know, you're good to watch this video. There's going to be no major details or plot points discussed that weren't in the trailers already. So right off the bat, I just want to point out the performances in this series are excellent. The 2 standouts obviously are Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, I hope I'm saying that name at least somewhat right, as Wonder Man. And I just kind of want to say regarding him, he just brings such a grounded energy to this character, and you really buy into his struggles, his life. You really want to see this guy succeed. And there's so many times where even it's one of those actors that I just love, where just looking at his facial expressions, you can just tell so much more. Like, actions speak louder than words. Facial expressions sometimes speak louder than words, and I think that really applies here. He just really pours his heart and soul into this role. And while I can't say I know this is a pretty hardcore reimagining of the Wonder Man character from the comics, I also don't know a lot about the comic counterpart to really kind of go off of that or say anything meaningful. But in terms of how Yahya feels like that character come to life in the show, I can't really say that, quite frankly. But I will say, just in terms of what they were going for with this character, he absolutely crushes it. And I would of course be remiss not to mention Ben Kingsley, the excellent Ben Kingsley I should say, as Trevor Slattery. You know, the Iron Man 3 plot twist, I'm never going to like that. It just, in terms of that film and what it needed to do, I think that Mandarin plot twist, like midway through, you guys probably know what I'm talking about if you're watching this video, just didn't work whatsoever. But I will say they did kind of redeem the character in Shang-Chi. Again, not an excuse, but they're doing the best they can with what was a really bad plot point in my opinion. And I think here this is by far my favorite time seeing Trevor Slattery in the MCU. You can really tell Ben Kingsley's having the best of times with Abdul-Mateen. You can just tell the camaraderie and the brotherhood is just so authentic here. It really just feels like the rare modern day show that can have that camaraderie and that brotherhood, whatever you want to call it, with 2 male characters that just feels natural, and it's something you don't see a lot in modern Hollywood productions for whatever reason. And speaking of Hollywood, this is a love letter through and through, both to filmmaking and Hollywood in general. There's so many fun nods to certain filmmakers, to movies, many of which have nothing to do with Disney, so I kind of wonder how much money Disney spent probably trying to get the rights to say that in their product. But, I mean, just, you know, so many moments in there that if you're a cinephile like I am, you're going to absolutely love it. Doesn't even have to be, you know, very smartly, there's not a lot of nods to Marvel Easter eggs, at least that I noticed, but there's a lot of nods to filmmaking. So for me, I'll take what I can get. I really enjoyed those, and I don't want to spoil them, but there's definitely 1 or 2 in particular I was like, wow, they actually referenced that. So just again, a lot of fun in that regard. And I do like how this film breaks away, or this series, my bad. This series breaks away from the standard action comedy formula that the MCU has really become famous for. Some, like myself, might even say notorious for, especially in these past few years. I just feel like they found the perfect balance to where the humor feels less quippy, it's used more sparingly, and the action, there's really no action scene, and it really just, it focuses more on a grounded personal story than it does that bombastic CGI action scene or cheap fan service, and I really appreciated that. It's much more self-contained, and it emphasizes this main character, Simon Williams, his journey and his everyday struggles, and it emphasizes that over the usual cliches, because at this point that's pretty much what they are, that the MCU has given us time and time again. For some people that might be off-putting, but for me, I greatly enjoyed that, and as somebody that really enjoyed Fantastic Four First Steps for really feeling fresh and unique for the MCU, I think this is definitely a worthy follow-up to that, to continue into Phase 6, which seems to be a very experimental phase so far. So yeah, definitely enjoyed the fact that this really doesn't even feel like a Marvel show at all. And I kind of want to mention too, the formula. This is probably the most familiar aspect, but at the same time it's not. We've seen time and time again these stories of a hero trying to hide his identity from the world and try to contain it. And it really inverts that very generic formula that like 90-95% of comic book projects have, and it fits it into a story that we haven't really seen in the superhero genre. I mean, yeah, we've seen Peter Parker want to, have a normal life as a teenager without the world knowing he's Spider-Man, or even Superman trying to live a normal life as a news reporter without realizing he's Clark Kent. But we haven't really seen a superhero who wants to be an actor, or I guess I should say a guy that wants to be an actor that just so happens to have powers. It's a fresh take on that old and, honestly, depending on who you ask, kind of tired formula. Tried and true formula, but kind of tired nonetheless. And it just feels fresh and unique overall, not just for Marvel, but for comic book adaptations in general. And there's also a couple smart twists and turns as well thrown in along the way that are really neat. And kind of last thing I'll mention here for a positive, I know it's kind of crazy that I have to say this as a positive, but there's not a lot of homework you have to do to watch this show. Again, kind of similar to Fantastic Four. I would say there's very little you got to watch to really understand this series as a whole. I would say the biggest thing is probably you probably want to watch Iron Man 3. Maybe Shang-Chi, possibly, but I would say Iron Man 3 if you haven't seen that in a while, or let's just say you haven't even seen it at all. I think it would definitely be important that you watch that, at least Iron Man 3 first, because it's going to give you backstory to the Mandarin in particular, and you're going to kind of understand the angle that they play with in the series regarding that. That's all I'm going to say, but definitely ties heavily into Iron Man 3, and not just because of Trevor Slattery. But I would say even so, if you haven't seen Iron Man 3 and you just really want to get into Wonder Man, or let's say you have seen Iron Man 3 but it's been a while, the show does a good enough job at getting you caught up to where I don't feel like you're going to miss a whole lot. Again, I think you should watch Iron Man 3, or at least refresh your memory of it. But if you don't, you're not going to be completely lost watching this series. So that's pretty much all I got for the positives. I'm going to move on to the mixed aspect, which is pretty much, I mean, there's not really any cons that I have per se. They're just stuff that I didn't love about the show, but I didn't hate it either. Just kind of mixed bags. And kind of going into this category, I think the biggest thing is the lack of explanation for Simon's powers. It does partly make sense to a degree because this show is about an actor who happens to have powers as opposed to a hero that does have powers. And you're going to understand that if you've seen the show or are going to watch the show, you'll understand what I mean by that. It's not about a superhero, it's about an actor trying to make it in Hollywood. He just so happens to have powers. Now, I do have a theory about this. I'm kind of curious, and I feel like, and this isn't a spoiler because this is literally just my opinion on the matter, I think he's a mutant. I think, I personally think they're going the mutant direction, and that's why they don't explain it. But at the same time, the way the show ends, and again, no spoilers, but this could theoretically be a one and done. It doesn't even have a post-credit scene. It doesn't tease anything major at any point of the show for the MCU going forward. So kind of knowing that, I kind of feel like a line or two of dialogue would have helped just to kind of see, just at least say, I've had these powers since I was born or something. Just give us anything, honestly, especially since his future in the MCU isn't necessarily guaranteed, at least at the time of making this video. And additionally, I will say another thing that I kind of wish they had leaned into more was what they showed in the trailer. Probably the most interesting aspect of the trailer to me was there were a few nods, and it seemed like it was going to be a really cool meta commentary on really just how tired superhero fatigue is, and the overusage of remakes, rebootals, sequels, all of that stuff. And it seemed like, according to the trailers, that's where the show was going to go. Unfortunately, pretty much everything you hear, joke-wise, commentary-wise, in that trailer regarding that is literally in the trailer. Like, there's nothing new, there's nothing that they try to add in the actual show about that. So I do feel like in that regard, it does feel slightly misleading to people that have seen that trailer. So if you're going in expecting this to be some really smart, clever commentary on the state of the MCU or the state of Disney as a whole and Hollywood in general, it's not what you get here. But again, that's not a make or break deal for the show, because I do think, like I said, the show ended up much better than I thought it was going to be. So I'll take that trade-off, other than, you know, as opposed to having that and then the show just being bad in other areas. And kind of moving in, I guess, to my last point here, episode 4. I think episode 4 could have been a montage or just like a 5-minute flashback scene at most, but basically, without giving away any spoilers, it's one of those episodes that you'll see in certain TV shows where it'll focus on a character or a storyline that's outside of kind of what you see, like kind of outside of the main plot, more or less. Like, it has to do with it, but involves a different character, and that's what you get in episode 4. And I wouldn't mind it as much, because the episode is very clever. In fact, in a lot of ways, it could be one of the best episodes of the series, to be honest with you. But it kind of leads you along to making you feel like the character that's introduced would make a bigger impact to the story than it did in actuality. Like, it's important, and it's a big reason why Simon has the struggles that he has. And again, I'm trying not to get into spoilers here, but I also just kind of feel like a 5-minute flashback would have been just as effective than having an entire episode about a character that doesn't even get referenced for the rest of the series. So just felt a little off-putting in that regard. But I mean, overall, this is one of Marvel's most consistent Disney Plus series to date. I mean, it's right up there. If I was going to do like a just off the top of my head kind of ranking in terms of where I would place it, I'd put it right along with the likes of Hawkeye or Agatha All Along. And the cool thing is, just like with Agatha All Along, that was another show that the trailers didn't really win me over, but I ended up liking the series quite a bit. And I feel like that's the same thing here. I feel like if the trailers didn't win you over, but you're still like, it's Marvel, should I watch it, should I not watch it, I would say give it a whirl. I quite enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. If you're looking for something that is fresh and unique in this world of almost everything just feeling exactly the same, especially when it comes to the MCU, and if you're somebody that really wants to get into either, you know, the acting gig, or you just have an interest in filmmaking and Hollywood and movies in general, I think you'll greatly appreciate this series as well. So overall, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I think it's a solid, good show. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's amazing. I don't think it's like top 5 or even top 10 MCU. But if you're just looking for something that's fun, entertaining, and really just experimenting with the MCU sandbox in a way that we haven't really seen before, you're going to have a good time with this show. But that's all I got for today, guys. Just let me know in the comments down below what you all thought of Wonder Man. Have you seen the show? Have you seen the show? Have you started watching it but you're not done yet? I just kind of want to know what your guys' thoughts are on the series, either as a whole or what you've seen so far. And whatever it is, just comment down below. And as always, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And I will catch you all later.